The auction block felt like splinters under Theresa Ramsey's bare feet, and she learned that day what it meant to be worth less than a good horse. She was 14 years old when the preacher's widow sold her to settle gambling debts, standing in the dusty square of Malad City, Idaho, while men with tobacco-stained teeth examined her like livestock. The year was 1872, and the late summer sun beat down mercilessly as the auctioneer's voice droned on about her ability to cook and clean. A saloon owner named Garrett purchased her for $43, and she disappeared into the back rooms of the Silver Spur, learning quickly that survival meant swallowing your tears and forgetting you had ever been a child. 6 years passed in that saloon. 6 years of serving whiskey to men who looked through her rather than at her, of cleaning up after brawls, of dodging grabbing hands and listening to the piano player pound out the same melancholy tunes night after night. Theresa learned to read by stealing newspapers from the trash, learned to count money by watching card games, learned to move through the world like a shadow. She saved every penny she could hide, keeping coins in a tin buried beneath the floorboards of the storage closet where she slept. The saloon girls tried to befriend her, but Theresa kept her distance, knowing that attachment only led to heartbreak. She watched girls come and go, some finding husbands, others finding graves. By her 20th birthday in the spring of 1878, she had almost enough money to buy a train ticket to California, to disappear into a place where nobody knew what she had been. Then Wade Younger rode into Malad City on a gray gelding, trailing 3 pack horses loaded with furs and looking for a hot meal and a cold beer. He was 24 years old, tall and lean with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of creek water. He worked as a trapper and occasional ranch hand, spending most of his time in the mountains north of town, coming into civilization only when he needed supplies or when the loneliness got too heavy to carry alone. He had inherited his father's wandering spirit, but not his taste for whiskey, preferring coffee so strong it could strip paint. When he walked into the Silver Spur that April evening, Theresa was wiping down tables, and he was the first man in 6 years who met her eyes and smiled like she was a person. "Excuse me, miss," Wade said, removing his hat. "Would it be too much trouble to get some dinner? I have been eating my own cooking for 3 months, and I think my stomach is staging a rebellion." Theresa blinked, momentarily thrown by his courtesy. "The kitchen serves until 8. Take any table. Much obliged." He chose a corner table, positioning himself so his back was to the wall, a habit born from years of caution. When Theresa brought him stew and cornbread, he thanked her and asked her name. "Theresa," she said carefully, not offering more, "I am Wade. This is mighty fine stew." She nodded and moved away, but she felt his eyes on her throughout the evening, not in the calculating way she had learned to fear, but with simple curiosity. When the saloon filled up, and the piano started, when the gamblers claimed their tables, and the working girls began their nightly routine of flirtation and commerce, Wade nursed a single beer and watched the room like a naturalist observing wildlife. Theresa found herself glancing his way more than she should, noticing how he politely declined when one of the girls approached him, how he seemed uncomfortable with the noise and smoke. Around midnight, a drunk ranch hand named Porter got aggressive with one of the girls, grabbing her wrist hard enough to make her cry out. Garrett was in the back doing his books, and the bartender was too small to intervene. Before Theresa could move, Wade was on his feet. "Let the lady go," Wade said quietly, his hand resting on the ranch hand's shoulder. "Mind your own business, trapper," Porter snarled, but his grip loosened. "I am making it my business. You are hurting her." Porter released the girl and swung at Wade, telegraphing the punch so obviously that Wade simply stepped aside, letting the drunk man's momentum carry him into a table. The crash brought Garrett running. Porter's friends dragged him outside, and Wade returned to his corner as if nothing had happened. The girl he had defended, a redhead named Molly, brought him a free beer with tears in her eyes. Theresa watched all of this while mechanically wiping glasses, something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. She had seen 100 fights in the Silver Spur, but she had never seen a man step in to defend someone weaker without expecting something in return. When the saloon finally emptied in the small hours of morning, Wade was still there, dozing in his chair. Theresa approached quietly. "We are closing," she said softly. Wade jolted awake, instantly alert. "Forgive me, I must have drifted off. How much do I owe for the meal?" 50 cents. He paid with a silver dollar and told her to keep the change. As he stood to leave, he paused. "That man who caused trouble earlier, does he come here often? Often enough?" "You should not have to work in a place like this," Wade said, then immediately looked embarrassed. "I apologize. That was presumptuous of me. I do not know your circumstances." "No," Theresa said, her voice harder than she intended. "You do not." She expected him to leave, but he stood there a moment longer, hat in his hands. "You have kind eyes," he said finally. "In a place like this, that is remarkable. Good night, Theresa." He walked out into the darkness, and Theresa stood frozen, her heart pounding for reasons she could not name. Nobody had ever told her she had kind eyes. Nobody had ever looked at her and seen something worth remarking on beyond her usefulness. She finished closing up, went to her storage closet, and sat on her thin mattress, replaying the conversation in her mind until sleep finally claimed her. Wade came back the next evening, and the evening after that. He always ordered dinner, always sat in the same corner, always thanked Theresa with genuine warmth. On the fourth night, during a lull between customers, he asked her if she would sit with him for a moment. "I cannot," she said. "Garrett does not pay me to sit." "I will pay for your time then." "How much for conversation?" Theresa felt something twist in her stomach. "I am not one of the working girls." Wade's face flushed red. "Lord, no, I did not mean it like that. I just thought, that is, you seem like someone who might have interesting things to say, and I am not very good at talking to people, but I would like to try talking to you, if that would be acceptable." His flustered sincerity disarmed her. She glanced around, saw that Garrett was deep in conversation with a whiskey supplier, and sat down across from Wade for just a moment. "I do not have interesting things to say," she told him. "I doubt that is true. Have you always lived in Malad City?" "For 6 years." "Where are you from originally?" The question landed like a stone in still water. Theresa's jaw tightened. "Does it matter? I suppose not. I am from Wyoming originally, though I have been wandering since I was 16. My father was a prospector who dragged us all over creation chasing rumors of gold. Never found any, but he gave me a powerful education in disappointment." Wade smiled sadly. "When he died, my mother remarried quickly, and my stepfather made it clear I was not welcome. So I left." "That must have been difficult," Theresa said, surprising herself by meaning it. "It gave me freedom, so I cannot complain too loudly. I like the mountains. They do not expect anything from you except respect." He leaned forward slightly. "Do you ever get time away from here?" "Sundays, sometimes, if we are not busy." "Would you take a walk with me this Sunday? In daylight, in public, completely respectable. I would like to know you better, Theresa." Every instinct told her to refuse. She had built walls for good reasons. But something in Wade's earnest expression, in the way he looked at her like she was someone worth knowing, made her nod. "Just a walk," she said. "Just a walk," he agreed, his smile bright enough to warm the whole room. That Sunday, Theresa met Wade in the town square, wearing her only decent dress and feeling absurdly nervous. He brought a small bouquet of wildflowers, which made her laugh despite herself. "I picked them this morning," he said. "I realize they are not fancy, but they reminded me of you. Hardy and beautiful despite difficult conditions." They walked along the creek that gave Malad City its water, talking in fits and starts that gradually became easier. Wade told her about tracking wolves, about nearly freezing to death in a blizzard, about a golden eagle he once watched hunt. Theresa found herself telling him about the books she had read by lamplight, about her dream of seeing the ocean, about the way sunrise looked through the gaps in the saloon's back door. She did not tell him how she came to be in Malad City, and he did not press. As the afternoon stretched long, they sat on a fallen log, and Wade turned to her with serious eyes. "Can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask. I might not answer." "Fair enough. Are you staying at the Silver Spur because you want to or because you feel you have to?" Theresa looked down at her hands. "I am saving money. When I have enough, I am leaving." "Where will you go?" "Anywhere else." Wade was quiet for a long moment. "You deserve better than that place. You deserve better than just surviving." "You do not know me well enough to know what I deserve." "Maybe not. But I know enough to see that you are special, Theresa. I have met a lot of people in my wandering, and most of them are either hard or hollow. You are neither. You have been hurt, I can see that, but you have not let it make you cruel. That takes strength most people do not have." Tears prickled at Theresa's eyes, and she blinked them back fiercely. "Why do you care?" "Because when I look at you, I see something worth caring about. Because you make me want to stay in one place for the first time in 8 years. Because I think maybe we could help each other be less lonely." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. "I am not a rich man, Theresa. I live rough and I do not have much to offer, but I would like to try courting you properly if you would let me." Theresa looked at their joined hands, his calloused and scarred, her small and work-worn. Something in her chest cracked open and light spilled in. "I was sold," she said quietly, 6 years ago. The woman I lived with sold me to pay her debts. I was 14 years old, and I have belonged to the Silver Spur ever since. I am not free, Wade. I cannot be courted because I am not my own person." Wade's hand tightened on hers, his expression darkening. "Garrett thinks he owns you. He has a bill of sale. That is not legal. You cannot own a person in Idaho, not since the war ended. Tell that to Garrett. Tell that to the sheriff who drinks at his saloon every night. Tell that to everyone who knows and does not care." Theresa pulled her hand away. "I should not have told you. Forget it. I will not forget it." Wade stood abruptly, agitation crackling through him. "That is slavery. That is a crime. You should not have to buy your own freedom." "But I do. That is the reality." Theresa stood as well, wrapping her arms around herself. "I have $18 saved. I need at least 30 for a ticket and enough to survive until I find work somewhere. By autumn, I will have it. Then I disappear." Wade paced a few steps, thinking hard. When he turned back, his expression was determined. "How much does Garrett think you owe him?" "What?" "If there is a bill of sale, there is an amount. How much?" "I do not know. He has never told me." "Then I am going to ask him, and I am going to pay it, and you are going to be free." "No." The word came out sharp. "Absolutely not. I will not trade one owner for another." "That is not what I am suggesting. I would pay your debt and expect nothing in return. You would owe me nothing, Theresa. You would be free to go to California or anywhere else you wanted. I just cannot stand the thought of you trapped there another day." She stared at him, searching for the trap, for the angle, for the inevitable price. But his face showed only honest concern and a righteous anger on her behalf. "Why would you do that?" "Because it is the right thing to do. Because you deserve to choose your own path." Because I care about you, and caring about someone means wanting them to be free and happy, even if that does not include me. He stepped closer. Let me help you, Theresa, please. She wanted to refuse. Pride demanded it. But the thought of being free, truly free, not running away like a thief in the night but walking out with her head high, was too powerful to resist. If you do this, she said slowly, I want it in writing that I owe you nothing. I want documentation that I am free, done, whatever you need. And I am not promising anything beyond that. I might still leave. I understand. Theresa took a shaky breath. Then yes, if Garrett will accept it, yes. Wade went to the Silver Spur that evening while Theresa waited in her room, too anxious to sleep. She heard raised voices, heard Garrett's laugh, heard the clink of coins. Then silence that stretched so long she thought Wade must have been thrown out or worse. Finally, near midnight, a knock came at her door. Theresa, Wade's voice. It is done. Can I talk to you? She opened the door to find him standing there with papers in his hand and an odd expression on his face. He accepted, she breathed. He was insulted at first, thought I was trying to buy your services permanently, which nearly got me thrown out. But when I explained I was purchasing your contract to free you, he found it hilarious. Sold you to me for $60 and a bottle of good whiskey. Wade handed her the papers. Here is the original bill of sale, marked paid in full. Here is a document I had the hotel clerk witness, stating that I relinquish any claim on you and acknowledge you as a free woman. And here is $40, which is what I have left after paying Garrett. I want you to have it. Theresa looked at the money, then at the papers, then at Wade. You spent everything you had. Not everything. I still have my horses and my gear. I will go back to the mountains for the summer, trap and hunt, and come back with more. But you are free now, Theresa. Right now, tonight, you do not have to go back into that saloon ever again if you do not want to. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Theresa sank down onto her mattress, clutching the papers, and sobbed. 6 years of careful control shattered, and she cried for the girl who had stood on the auction block, for the childhood stolen, for all the nights she had felt like nothing more than property. Wade knelt beside her, not touching but present, steady. When she finally regained control, she looked up at him with swollen eyes. Why? I told you, you deserve better. But you do not even know me, not really. I know enough. I know that you are brave and resilient and good. I know that when you smile, really smile, it is like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. I know that you have survived things that would have broken most people, and you still have hope enough to save for a dream. Wade's voice grew softer. And I know that the thought of you belonging to anyone, of you not being able to choose your own path, was unbearable to me. So I chose to fix it the only way I could. Theresa wiped her face with the back of her hand. I do not know how to be free. I imagine you will learn. You seem to be good at learning. He stood slowly. I am heading back to the mountains tomorrow. I will be gone until September probably. But when I return, if you are still in Malad City, I would like to see you again. If you are not, if you decide to chase your ocean, I will understand. The choice is yours, Theresa. That is what freedom means. After Wade left, Theresa sat in her tiny room holding the papers until dawn. When the morning came, she walked out of the Silver Spur with her few possessions in a bundle, went to the boarding house, and rented a real room with a real bed. The landlady, Mrs. Chen, was a Chinese immigrant who asked no questions and charged fair prices. Theresa spent the first full day of her freedom sleeping in a bed with clean sheets, and when she woke, she cried again, but this time from relief. She found work easily enough. A seamstress named Mrs. Patterson needed help with the increase in orders as summer approached, and Theresa's neat stitching earned her a position. The work was hard on her eyes and fingers, but it was honest and clean. She rented her room, bought her meals, and still had money left over. The weight of constant fear began to lift from her shoulders. Spring turned to summer, and Theresa slowly built a life. She befriended Mrs. Chen's daughter, Lily, who taught her to cook Chinese food in exchange for reading lessons. She attended church socials, not because she felt particularly religious, but because it was what respectable women did, and she was learning to be respectable. Men showed interest, but she deflected them politely. Her thoughts kept drifting to Wade in the mountains, wondering if he was safe, if he thought about her, if he would really come back. She caught herself watching the trail from the north, and it annoyed her. She did not need a man to save her. Wade had given her the means to save herself, and that was different, but she did not owe him her affection. She did not owe him anything. The papers said so. But when September came and Wade rode into town, her heart jumped in a way that had nothing to do with obligation. He looked leaner, more weathered, his hair longer and his beard thick. He went straight to the Silver Spur, and Theresa heard later that he had asked after her there. Garrett apparently told him she had moved to the boarding house, though he added some crude speculation about why Wade might be looking for her. When Wade showed up at Mrs. Chen's establishment, Theresa was sitting on the porch, mending a dress. "Hello, Theresa," he said, hat in his hands again. "Hello, Wade, you stayed." "I did. I am glad." He shifted his weight, suddenly uncertain. "Would you like to take a walk? Or if you would prefer not to, I understand. I do not want to presume." Theresa set down her sewing and stood. "A walk would be nice." They fell into step together, heading toward the creek again. The cottonwoods were turning gold, and the air had the crisp edge of approaching autumn. For a while they walked in comfortable silence. "How was your summer?" Theresa asked finally. "Profitable. Lonely. I spent a lot of time thinking." Wade glanced at her. "How was yours?" "Strange. Good. I work for a seamstress now. I have a room with a real door that locks from the inside. I sleep without listening for footsteps in the hall." She paused. "I have been happy, I think." "I am not sure I know what happiness is supposed to feel like, but if it is this, then I have been happy." "That is good. That is what I hoped for you." Wade stopped walking and turned to face her. "Theresa, I need to tell you something. All summer I told myself that I freed you so you could be free, not so you would feel grateful or obligated. And that is true. But it is also true that I have feelings for you, strong feelings. And I do not know if you feel anything similar, but I need to be honest about where I stand." Theresa's breath caught. "What kind of feelings?" "The kind where I want to know everything about you. The kind where I imagine building a life with you if you would want that. The kind where I think about you constantly and hope you are thinking about me too." He took a careful step closer. "I am in love with you, Theresa. I think I started falling the first night I saw you, and every moment since has just made it stronger." "You do not know me," she whispered, but her heart was racing. "Then let me know you. Give me the chance to learn every part of you." "I am not asking you to love me back right now. I am just asking for the chance to court you properly." He reached out and gently took her hand. "I want to give you everything you were denied, Theresa. Not because you need saving, but because you deserve joy and gentleness and someone who sees your worth. Let me give you the childhood you deserved, the adolescence, the chance to be courted and cherished and chosen. Let me show you what it means to be valued." Tears spilled down Theresa's cheeks. "I do not know how to be loved. Then we will learn together, because I am not sure I know how to love someone properly either, but I want to try. With you, I want to try." Wade brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "What do you say?" She looked at him, at his honest eyes and open expression, at the way he held her hand like it was something precious. She thought about the months since her freedom, how she had been waiting without admitting she was waiting. She thought about the way her heart lifted when she saw him, the way she felt safe in his presence, the way he made her want to believe in goodness again. "I think I might love you too," she said quietly. "It terrifies me, but I think I do." Wade's smile was brilliant. "May I kiss you?" "Yes." He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind, and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss so gentle it made her ache. It was her first real kiss, freely given, freely received, and it felt like a door opening onto sunlight. When they parted, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this," he murmured. "Do not make promises you cannot keep." "That is one I know I can." They courted through the autumn, and Wade showed Theresa what it meant to be cherished. He took her on picnics and taught her to ride horses. He brought her small gifts, wildflowers and interesting stones, and once a book of poetry he had traded for in town. He asked her questions about her thoughts and dreams and listened to the answers like they mattered. He held her when nightmares made her wake gasping, and he never pushed for more than she was ready to give. Theresa bloomed under his attention. She learned to laugh freely, to speak her mind without fear, to imagine a future beyond mere survival. She told him, eventually, about the years before the auction, about the preacher's widow who had taken her in after her parents died of fever, who had promised to care for her, and then sold her like furniture. She told him about the things she had witnessed in the Silver Spur, about the darkness that still lived in her memories. Wade listened to all of it and loved her anyway, loved her more for having survived it. In November, Wade asked her to marry him. They were sitting by a fire he had built near the creek, wrapped in blankets against the cold, watching stars emerge in the deepening twilight. "I know it is fast," he said. "I know you might want more time, but I am certain, Theresa, I want to marry you. I want to build a home with you, have children with you if you want them, grow old with you. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are beside me. Will you marry me?" Theresa looked at him, at the man who had seen her worth when she had forgotten it herself, who had given her freedom and then given her the space to choose him on her own terms. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." They married in December at the small church in Malad City, with Mrs. Chen and Lily as witnesses and Mrs. Patterson providing Theresa's dress, a simple but beautiful creation in cream-colored wool. Theresa was 20 years old, and for the first time in her memory, she felt like her life was truly beginning rather than just continuing. Wade was 25, and he looked at his bride like she was the answer to every question he had ever asked. They moved into a small cabin Wade had been renting, and Theresa made it a home with curtains and rugs and careful attention. Wade continued his work as a trapper and occasional ranch hand, and Theresa continued sewing, though now she did piecework from home. They were not wealthy, but they were content. The first year of marriage was an education. They learned each other's habits and moods, learned how to fight and make up, learned the intimate geography of each other's bodies and hearts. Wade was patient with Theresa's occasional nightmares and moments of panic, and she was patient with his tendency toward melancholy and his need for solitude. They built something solid together, a partnership based on mutual respect and deepening love. One evening in early spring, Wade came home to find Theresa crying at the kitchen table. He dropped his gear and rushed to her side. "What is wrong? Are you hurt?" "No," she said, laughing through tears. "No, I am fine. I am pregnant, Wade. We are going to have a baby." His expression went through shock, then wonder, then pure joy. He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. When he set her down, he cupped her face in his hands. "A baby. We are going to have a baby. Oh, Theresa, I am going to be a father. Are you happy?" "I am beyond happy. I am terrified and thrilled and grateful." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You are going to be such a good mother." "I do not know how to be a mother. I barely remember mine." "Then we will learn together, just like everything else." He placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "This child is going to be so loved, Theresa, so protected. We are going to give this baby the childhood we both deserved." The pregnancy was difficult. Theresa was sick for months, could barely keep food down, and spent most of her days exhausted. Wade hovered anxiously, bringing her anything she thought she might be able to eat, rubbing her feet, reading to her in the evenings. As her belly grew, his protectiveness increased. He took on extra work to save money, wanting to be sure they had everything the baby would need. In November of 1879, during a snowstorm that buried Malad City under 2 feet of white, Theresa went into labor. Mrs. Chen came to help, bringing Lily and another Chinese woman who worked as a midwife. Wade was banished to the front room, where he paced and prayed and jumped at every sound. The labor was long and hard, and there were moments when Mrs. Chen looked worried, but finally, near dawn, a baby's cry pierced the air. Mrs. Chen emerged smiling. "You have a son, a healthy, loud son." Wade rushed into the bedroom to find Theresa propped up on pillows, exhausted and radiant, holding a tiny bundle. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "We have a son, Wade, a beautiful son." He sat on the edge of the bed, staring in wonder at the small red face peeking out from the blankets. "Can I hold him?" Theresa carefully transferred the baby into his arms. Wade held his son like he was made of glass, counting tiny fingers, marveling at perfect ears. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I am your father, and I promise you right now that you will always be safe and loved and free. You will never know what it means to be afraid in your own home. You will never doubt your worth." He looked at Theresa. "What should we name him?" "I was thinking Thomas Wade Younger." "That is perfect." Wade bent to kiss her forehead. "Thank you, Theresa. Thank you for this gift. Thank you for trusting me enough to build this life." "Thank you for seeing me," she replied. "Thank you for giving me the chance to be more than what I was. You were always more. I just helped you see it." They settled into the rhythms of parenthood with the same determination they had brought to everything else. Thomas was a demanding baby, colicky and fussy. But Wade walked the floor with him night after night, singing half-remembered songs and telling stories. Theresa nursed him and marveled at the fierce love that consumed her, a love so powerful it sometimes scared her. She understood, holding her son, that she would kill or die to protect him, and the intensity of that feeling was both terrifying and transforming. As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, the little cabin filled with joy and noise. He was a curious child, getting into everything, asking endless questions as soon as he could talk. Wade taught him to recognize animal tracks and bird calls. Theresa taught him letters and numbers. They both taught him kindness and respect and the value of hard work. When Thomas was 3, Theresa became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1883 she delivered a daughter they named Margaret Rose. Where Thomas had been difficult, Margaret was placid and content. She rarely cried, gazed at the world with solemn blue eyes, and seemed perfectly happy wherever she was placed. Thomas was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything, patting her head with sticky toddler hands and bringing her his favorite toys. Wade thrived as a father. He had found his purpose in providing for and protecting his family. He took work closer to home now, refusing jobs that would take him away for more than a few days. Money was sometimes tight, but they always had enough. Wade was skilled and reliable, and word got around. Ranchers sought him out for difficult jobs, knowing he would get them done right. Theresa continued her sewing. working when the children napped, and her reputation for quality work meant she never lacked for orders. She had never imagined she could be this content, that life could be this good. Sometimes she woke in the night, gripped by the fear that it would all be taken away. But Wade would sense her distress and pull her close, murmuring reassurance until she relaxed again. When Margaret was a year old, a stranger came to Malad City asking after Theresa. Mrs. Patterson mentioned it when Theresa came to deliver finished work. Man was in here yesterday, older fellow, asking if I knew a Theresa who would be about 23 years old now. Said he was looking for someone from his past. I did not tell him anything, but I thought you should know. Theresa's blood ran cold. What did he look like? Tall, gray beard, well-dressed, had the look of money about him. Said his name was Harrison something. Harrison. The name hit Theresa like a fist. Harrison Reed, the preacher's widow's brother who had been there the day of the auction, who had pocketed half the money from her sale. She had not thought about him in years. She went home and told Wade immediately. He listened, his expression darkening. You think he means you harm? I do not know. I cannot imagine why he would come looking for me after all this time unless it was something bad. Then we prepare for trouble. Wade checked his rifle, cleaned and loaded his pistol. He will not touch you or the children, I promise you that. Harrison Reed came to their cabin 2 days later in the morning when Wade was out checking traps. Theresa saw him through the window, felt panic seize her throat. She grabbed Margaret, called for Thomas to stay inside, and stood with her back to the children as the knock came. Who is it? She called. My name is Harrison Reed. I am looking for Theresa Ramsey. I mean no harm, I just want to talk. I have nothing to say to you, please. I have come a long way, just 5 minutes of your time. Theresa set Margaret in her crib, told Thomas to stay with his sister, and opened the door with a kitchen knife hidden in her skirt. Harrison Reed stood on her porch, hat in hand, looking older and sadder than she remembered. What do you want? She asked coldly. To apologize. To make amends, if that is possible. He looked at her, and his eyes were wet. I am dying, Miss Ramsey. The doctor gives me 6 months at most, and I have been trying to find you for the past year because I cannot go to my grave with this sin on my conscience. Which sin would that be? Taking money from the sale of a child, or standing by while your sister sold me in the first place? Both, all of it. Harrison's voice broke. I was a coward and a fool. My sister was a cruel woman, I knew that, but I did nothing. I let her sell you, and I took that blood money, and I have not had a peaceful night's sleep since. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness. I know nothing I do can undo what was done, but I brought something, and I wanted you to have it. He held out an envelope. Theresa did not take it. What is that? $500. It is everything I took from your sale with interest calculated at the bank, and a deed to a property I own in Boise. It is a small house, rental property, brings in steady income. I want you to have it. I want to give you something back. I do not want your money. Please. Let me do this one decent thing. You do not have to forgive me. You do not even have to take the property if you do not want it. But take the money for your children. I can see you have children. Give them opportunities you never had. Let some good come from this evil. Theresa stared at him, torn between anger and a strange pity. This man had contributed to her suffering, but he was clearly suffering now himself. Did your sister ever regret what she did? She asked. No. She died 10 years ago, bitter and unrepentant to the end. But I am not her. I am trying to be better than I was, even if it is too late. Harrison set the envelope on the porch railing. I will not trouble you further. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry, more sorry than words can say. I hope life has been kind to you since then. I hope you found happiness. He turned to leave, and Theresa found herself speaking. Wait. Harrison turned back, hope flickering across his face. I did find happiness. I have a husband who loves me and 2 beautiful children and a life I built from nothing. You did not destroy me, Mr. Reed. You hurt me, but you did not destroy me. And I suppose that is the best revenge I could have. That is more grace than I deserve. Thank you for telling me. I am not sure I forgive you, I'm not sure I can, but I do not hate you anymore. Hate is too heavy to carry. Theresa picked up the envelope. I will take this because you are right. My children deserve opportunities, but you do not get to feel absolved. You have to live with what you did, and then you have to die with it. That is your burden. I understand. Thank you for seeing me, Miss Ramsey. It is Mrs. Younger now, Mrs. Younger. I hope your husband knows how fortunate he is. Harrison Reed walked away, and Theresa watched him go, feeling strange and unmoored. When Wade came home an hour later, she told him everything. He looked at the money, at the property deed, and then at his wife. How do you feel? He asked. I do not know. Sad, maybe. Relieved that he is dying, which makes me feel guilty. Grateful that we have this money, which also makes me feel guilty. The money is not tainted. It is restitution. It is what you were owed. Wade pulled her into his arms. And you handled that with more grace than most people could have managed. I am proud of you. I just want to be done with the past. I want to focus on our future. Then that is what we will do. They used Harrison's money wisely. They bought more land, expanded the cabin into a proper house with separate bedrooms for the children. Wade purchased better equipment for his work, invested in breeding stock for a small cattle operation. The rental property in Boise provided steady income that gave them security they had never had before. Slowly, year by year, they built something substantial. Thomas grew into a thoughtful, gentle boy who loved animals and spent hours following his father around, learning everything Wade could teach him. Margaret became a bright, cheerful child, quick with words and quicker with affection. In 1886, Theresa gave birth to another son, Robert, and in 1889, a second daughter, Anna. The house rang with children's voices, with laughter and occasional tears, with the sounds of a full, rich life. Theresa had moments, particularly when her daughters were around 14, when memories surfaced sharp and bitter. She watched Margaret and Anna growing into young women, watched their innocence and freedom, and felt the old grief rise. But she pushed it down, determined that her children would never carry the weight of her past. They knew she had grown up in difficult circumstances, but they did not know the worst of it. That was Wade's and Theresa's secret to carry together. Wade watched his wife carefully during those years, attuned to her moods. On difficult days, he would take her riding in the evening after the children were in bed, would hold her hand and remind her that she was safe, that she was loved, that the past could not touch her anymore. You gave me everything, Theresa told him one evening when they were sitting on their porch, watching the sun set. She was 35 years old now, and Wade was 40. Their oldest children were nearly grown. You gave me freedom and love and a family. You gave me the childhood I deserved, just like you promised. You let me be young, even though I had already grown old. You gave me purpose, Wade replied. Before you, I was just wandering, existing, but not really living. You made me want to build something, to be someone worthy of your trust. We saved each other, I think. I love you more than I ever thought possible. I love you more than I have words to say. They kissed as the stars emerged, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life worth living from the broken pieces of their pasts. Thomas left home at 19 to study animal husbandry at a new agricultural college, writing home every week with detailed letters about his studies. Margaret married a teacher from Boise at 21, a kind young man who treated her like a queen. Robert showed promise as a carpenter, apprenticing with a builder in town. Anna, the baby, talked about becoming a doctor, which seemed impossible for a woman but which Theresa and Wade encouraged anyway. As their children grew and left, Wade and Theresa found themselves alone again, but it was a different solitude than either had known in youth. This was companionable, easy, full of shared history and comfortable silence. They traveled to California finally when Theresa was 38, and she saw the ocean for the first time. She stood on the shore, watching waves crash, and cried for the girl who had dreamed of this moment while scrubbing saloon floors. "Was it worth the wait?" Wade asked, standing beside her. "Yes, because I am seeing it free with the man I love, having lived a life I am proud of. If I had run away at 20, I would have been running from something. Now I am not running at all. I am just living." They stayed in California for a month, exploring and relaxing, spending some of the money they had carefully saved over the years. It was a second honeymoon, a celebration of survival and love and the life they had built. They returned to Malad City refreshed, ready to embrace the next chapter. Wade was slowing down a bit, his body showing the wear of years of hard work, but he was healthy and strong. Theresa had silver threads in her dark hair now, laugh lines around her eyes. They had earned every mark time had left on them. Margaret gave them their first grandchild in 1895, a little girl they named Theresa after her grandmother. Theresa wept when she held her namesake, overwhelmed by the fullness of her life. She had been sold at 14, had spent years believing she was worthless, and now she held her granddaughter in a home she owned, surrounded by love she had built. Thomas married 2 years later, bringing home a rancher's daughter who immediately charmed everyone. Robert found love with a widow who had a young son, creating an instant family. Even Anna, despite her ambitions, fell for a young doctor who supported her dreams and married her on the condition that she finish her education. As the new century approached, Wade and Theresa often sat on their porch in the evenings, watching the world turn. They had lived through enormous changes, had built something lasting. Their children were happy and settled. Their grandchildren were growing like weeds. They had enough money to be comfortable and each other for company. "You ever think about what your life might have been like if we had not met?" Wade asked one evening. "Sometimes. I probably would have made it to California, found some kind of work, survived. But I would not have lived, not really." Theresa reached for his hand. "You taught me that there is a difference between surviving and thriving. You taught me that I was worth more than I believed. You saw me, Wade, really saw me, and that changed everything. I just loved you. It was the easiest thing I have ever done." That is not true. Loving someone broken is hard. Loving someone with my history, my nightmares, my fears, that took patience and strength. You were never broken. You were bent, maybe, but not broken. And anyway, I was not exactly whole myself. We healed each other. They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching night fall over the land they had come to call home. Wade died in 1903, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 58. He simply did not wake up one morning, his heart having given out quietly in the night. Theresa woke beside him, knew immediately what had happened, and lay there for a long time, holding his cooling hand, saying goodbye to the man who had given her everything. The funeral was well attended. Wade had been respected in the community, known for his honesty and hard work. But Theresa barely noticed the crowd. She stood by his grave, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and felt the loss like a physical wound. They had 33 years together, which was more than she had ever expected to have, but it was not enough. It would never have been enough. In the months after, Theresa struggled. The house felt empty without Wade's presence. She went through the motions of living, but the color had leached out of the world. Her children worried, visited often, tried to convince her to come stay with one of them. But Theresa refused. This was her home, hers and Wade's, and she would not abandon it. Slowly, gradually, she found her way back to living. She poured her grief into her sewing, creating a beautiful quilt that told the story of her life in fabric and thread. Each square represented a different chapter. The darkness of her early years, the moment Wade freed her, their wedding, the births of their children, the house they built, the trip to the ocean. She worked on it for 2 years, and when it was finished, she gave it to Margaret to pass down through the generations. "This is our story," she told her daughter. "Your father's and mine. I want you to have it so you never forget where you came from or what love can do." Theresa lived another 12 years after Wade's death, dying at the age of 67 in 1915. She was surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, a matriarch who had built a legacy from nothing. Her last words were, "I see him. Wade is waiting for me." At her funeral, Thomas stood to speak, his voice thick with emotion. "Our mother had a difficult start in life. She knew hardship and injustice that most of us can barely imagine, but she never let that darkness define her. She chose love. She chose hope. She chose to build something beautiful from broken pieces, and our Father helped her do that. He saw her worth when others did not, and He gave her the freedom to become who she was meant to be. Together, they showed us what it means to truly love someone, to honor them, to build a life based on mutual respect and care. We are all here because they found each other, because they chose each other, because they loved each other well. That is their legacy, and it is one we should all aspire to. Theresa was buried beside Wade, their headstones simple but marked with the same inscription: "Beloved, free, home." Years later, when Margaret's granddaughter was doing a school project on family history, she asked about the quilt that hung in the family home, the one with all the strange squares that seemed to tell a story. Margaret, now an old woman herself, sat down with the girl and told her the truth. "Your great-great-grandmother was sold as a child. She was treated as property, denied her freedom, robbed of her childhood. But she survived. And when she was 20 years old, a cowboy named Wade Younger saw her worth. He bought her freedom, expecting nothing in return. He loved her, courted her, married her, and gave her the life she deserved. He helped her heal from wounds that should have destroyed her. Together, they built this family, this legacy. Everything we have, everything we are, started with his choice to see her as valuable and her choice to trust him. That is a love story worth remembering." The girl looked at the quilt with new eyes, seeing the darkness and the light, the pain and the healing, the journey from despair to joy. They really loved each other, more than anything. They saved each other, and in doing so, they saved all of us who came after. Love, real love, does that. It does not just change the people involved. It ripples out through generations. And so the story of Theresa and Wade lived on, told around dinner tables and passed down through the years, a testament to the power of seeing someone's worth, of offering freedom, of choosing love even when the world has been cruel. It was a story of survival and healing, of two broken people who became whole together, of the way a single act of kindness can echo through time. The house they built still stood, weathered but strong, sheltering their descendants. The land they purchased still produced. The rental property in Boise still brought in income, carefully managed by family trustees. But more than the physical legacy, they left something intangible and infinitely more valuable. They left proof that the past does not have to define you, that freedom is worth fighting for, that love can heal even the deepest wounds. Theresa Ramsey, who was sold at 14, who grew into a woman in captivity, who was freed by a cowboy who saw her worth, had lived. Not just survived, but truly lived. She had been loved and had loved in return. She had built a family and a home. She had known joy and peace. She had taken the childhood she deserved, the one Wade helped her reclaim, and used it to become someone worthy of her own respect. And Wade younger, who had wandered aimlessly until he found his purpose in a saloon in Malad City, who had given everything to free a woman he barely knew, who had loved her with patience and constancy until his last breath, had fulfilled his promise. He had given Theresa the life she deserved. He had helped her become free, not just legally but emotionally and spiritually. He had shown her what it meant to be valued, cherished, chosen. Their story was not a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real, messy, complicated, and beautiful. It was a story of redemption and grace, of two people who found each other at exactly the right moment and chose to build something lasting. It was a reminder that the worst circumstances do not have to lead to the worst endings, that change is possible, that love is powerful enough to transform lives. In the end, that was the legacy Theresa and Wade left. Hope. Hope that freedom is possible. Hope that love can heal. Hope that no matter how dark the beginning, the ending can be bright. And for all the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who came after them, who heard their story and marveled at it, who looked at the quilt and saw the journey from darkness to light, that hope was a precious inheritance indeed. The cowboy saw her worth. The woman found her freedom. Together, they built a love that echoed through generations, proving that the best love stories are not the ones that begin perfectly, but the ones that end well, with two people who chose each other and fought for each other and loved each other through everything the world threw at them. And they lived. They truly lived.